"I'm sorry, but the insurance won't cover this one." That's what the nurse said, her eyes flitting quickly to my face and then down again, like she didn't want to look too long. I could tell she hated delivering that kind of news. I just nodded, didn't flinch, didn't argue. I'd been expecting it. The worst part wasn't hearing that the surgery would cost more than I could manage. It was knowing I'd have to ask him, my son. Ask him for something that wasn't easy to give. I'd paid for his college, his first home, the down payment on that fancy car he drives around town like a trophy. But now I needed help, and I already knew the look he'd give me. I was 78, with knees that clicked when I stood too fast and hips that liked to remind me of every winter I'd ever lived through. The doctor had been clear. Without this operation, I'd soon lose the ability to walk unassisted. I laughed dryly as I walked back to my car, slowly, carefully, thinking, what would that even change? The air outside the clinic was heavy. Summer was dying hard this year, clinging to the Carolina sky with sticky heat. I sat in my old Honda for a few minutes before starting the engine. Not because I needed rest, because I needed to steel myself. The last time I'd asked Trevor for help, he'd looked at me like I was being dramatic. "You still live alone, don't you?" "Doesn't seem so bad," he said. That was when the washing machine broke, and I'd asked if he could help me move a used one I found online. But I wasn't going to find a surgery secondhand on Craigslist. That evening, I called him. Didn't text. I've never liked how easy it is to ignore a text. When he picked up, his voice was loud with background noise. "Hey, Mom, I'm just in the middle of dinner. What's up?" I hesitated. "It's important," I said. "Can you talk?" He sighed. I imagined him pinching the bridge of his nose like he used to do when he was a teenager, pretending to be exhausted by my very existence. "Make it quick." So I made it quick. I told him the diagnosis, told him what the doctor said, told him the cost. $52,000, all told. The kind of number that doesn't sound real unless you're buying a house or burying someone. I told him I'd checked everything. Savings, Medicare, supplemental insurance. None of it would stretch that far. He was quiet a moment, then said, "Jesus, Ma, that's a lot of money." "I know." "You really can't pay for it yourself?" "If I could, I wouldn't be calling you, Trevor." Another pause, then lighter, almost cheerful. "Don't worry. I'll figure something out." And that was it. I wanted to believe it. Wanted to believe he meant it in the way a son means it, with action, not avoidance. But in my stomach, something twisted. 2 weeks passed. I didn't hear from him again, except for a picture he sent of the kids at a soccer game. I waited. I told myself he was busy. He always was. Then the letter came. I opened it on a Thursday morning at the kitchen table I'd had since 1979. The return address was my insurance company. Inside was a statement. A final balance, $0. Status, closed. It made no sense. I still had coverage. I'd paid every premium. I called them. Waited through the usual labyrinth of hold music and option menus. When I finally got a person, she sounded confused. "It was cashed out," she said. "In full." "By who?" She double-checked. "Trevor Archer. You granted him power of attorney 2 years ago." It gave him access to the policy. My hand gripped the edge of the table. He said he'd figure something out. "Yes, ma'am," and he did. He liquidated it last week. She read it like it was normal, like it was just another Tuesday for her. But for me, the floor had dropped out. I hung up and stared at the letter again. My son had taken my life insurance. Not to help me live, but to make sure there'd be nothing left when I was gone. And for the first time in years, I didn't cry. I didn't even feel sad. Just cold. Cold and clear, like a pane of glass that's been fogged up too long. He'd made a choice. And now, so would I. I didn't call him. Not that day, not the next. I didn't trust my voice yet. Instead, I pulled out the shoebox from under my bed, a faded, ugly thing with water stains on one side. The box that held everything that mattered. My marriage certificate, George's will, the deed to this house, and Trevor's power of attorney. I'd signed it 2 years ago, after my fall on the porch steps. He'd driven me home from the hospital, silent most of the way, then said as he handed me a bottle of prescription painkillers, "We should get your paperwork in order, just in case." And I, worn down by pain and hope that maybe he was stepping up, said yes. I signed the paper and filed it away, never thinking he'd use it for anything besides picking up my prescriptions, or maybe settling a bill or two if I ended up unconscious. But he'd used it. Fully. Quietly. With no conversation. No permission. Just a signature and a smile behind my back. I sat with that paper in my lap for a long time. My teacup went cold. My thoughts didn't. When I finally picked up the phone, it wasn't to call Trevor. It was to call someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Lorna Bell, my husband's old friend. Now a paralegal at one of the best elder law firms in the county. She still answered with the same breezy, "Hello, sunshine," she used back when we all used to meet for barbecues and church potlucks. "Lorna," I said, my voice firmer than I felt, "I need help, and I don't want my son involved." She didn't ask why. She just said, "Come in tomorrow at 10. That night, I sat in my living room, the soft hum of the ceiling fan overhead, and I remembered. Not just Trevor as a boy, the missing teeth and sticky fingers and questions about dinosaurs, but Trevor, last Christmas. Sitting at this very table, scrolling through his phone while I cleared the plates. His wife, Dana, chatting with her mother on speakerphone in the kitchen like I wasn't even there. The kids, both teenagers now, glued to their screens. They gave me a gift card to a local department store. I'd given them a check to help cover a family trip to Belize. I remembered thinking, this is just what families become. Everyone grows up and apart. But now I saw it clearer. We hadn't grown apart. I'd been quietly pushed out. Boxed up like an old vase no one wants to throw away, but no one wants to look at either. At 10 the next morning, I sat across from a thin, serious woman named Margot, who looked over the power of attorney with eyes like a hawk. Lorna hovered nearby with a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "You're not powerless, Mrs. Archer," Margot said. "It's a durable general POA. He acted within its scope, but if we can prove he acted against your interest—" "He did," I said. "I needed that money for a medical procedure. He took it without telling me." Margot nodded. "Then we pursue 2 things. First, a formal revocation of this document. Second, legal action to recover the funds. It won't be fast or easy, but it's doable." I sat back in my chair, breathing in through my nose. Doable. I liked the sound of that. Afterward, I walked the 2 blocks to the cafe I used to visit with George, ordered a turkey melt and ate it slowly, savoring every bite like it mattered. When I got home, I opened the drawer where I kept all the paperwork for Trevor's family. College tuition, the down payment, the medical emergencies. I gathered them into a folder. And then I sat down and wrote a letter. Handwritten. 3 pages. It began like this. Trevor. There are things a mother should never have to say to her child. This is one of them. You took something that didn't belong to you. You did it without asking, without telling, and in a way that showed me exactly how little regard you have for the life I've lived and the one I'm still trying to preserve. I won't beg you to understand. I won't ask for apologies. I'm taking back what I can. My money, my name, my dignity. If you want to speak to me again, you'll need to earn it. I didn't send it. Not yet. But I folded it carefully, slid it into an envelope, and left it on the table, right next to the power of attorney. Trevor had made a decision. Now I was making mine. The envelope sat on the table for 3 days. Every time I passed it, I thought about mailing it. Every time I sat down with a cup of tea, I stared at it. And every night, before bed, I'd glance at it and think, tomorrow. But I didn't mail it. Not yet. I wasn't waiting for a better moment. I was waiting to see if he would call. If something inside him, anything resembling guilt, decency, shame, would push him to dial my number. But the phone stayed silent. It wasn't until Sunday morning that I heard his voice again. Not on the phone, in person. He let himself into my house with the spare key he still had from years ago, back when I used to ask him to water the plants while I was out of town. I was in the kitchen, cutting an apple, when the door creaked open and I heard his voice. Mom? I turned slowly. He was standing there like he owned the place, holding a coffee cup from some chain I'd never liked, wearing that usual too big grin of his. You changed the curtains, he said, like this was just any Sunday. I didn't smile. You cashed out my life insurance. He blinked. The smile faltered. I was going to tell you. Then why didn't you? His mouth opened, then closed. I watched him try to come up with something. Trevor was always fast on his feet, always had a line ready, even when he was a boy. But now, standing in my kitchen, caught in his own decision, he was slower. You needed help, he said finally. And I figured, well, that money wasn't doing you any good just sitting there. That money, I repeated. That money was for my burial, for your children, so they wouldn't have to take out loans to bury their grandmother. He rubbed the back of his neck. Don't be so dramatic. You're not dying. I might be, Trevor. That's the whole point. And now I have nothing to leave behind but a few quilts and an old Honda. He walked farther into the room, setting his coffee on the table like it belonged there. Look, I was going to use it for your surgery. I mean, technically, it's still for you. Technically? I raised my eyebrows. That's what you want to hide behind. It's not like I spent it on myself. I tilted my head. Didn't you? He froze. I saw the post, I said. You didn't delete it fast enough. The new entertainment system. Dana's dream patio. The outdoor kitchen with the granite counter. He didn't deny it. Instead, he had the audacity to look annoyed. You're seriously going to make this about money? Yes, I said flatly. Because you made it about money the moment you decided to take mine. Silence sat heavy between us. The only sound was the quiet hum of the fridge and the soft chirp of birds outside the window. He shook his head, tried again. You're my mother. I've always looked out for you. No, I said. You've always looked out for what I could give you. He straightened, anger flickering now. You know what, Mom? Maybe if you weren't so stubborn, so secretive about your health. Maybe if you had told me about the surgery earlier. I told you the day I found out. He fell silent again. I stepped forward, took the envelope off the table and handed it to him. This is for you. He didn't take it. What is it? A letter, I said. From the woman who raised you, paid your way, believed in you. Still, he didn't reach for it. He stared at me, like he didn't recognize me anymore. I've revoked the power of attorney, I said. Filed the papers Friday. You'll be contacted formally soon. I'm also pursuing recovery of the funds. That's ridiculous, he said, his voice rising. You want to drag this through court? You want to humiliate me? I want to protect what little I have left. This is crazy. He stepped back. You're acting like I'm some kind of criminal. I didn't reply. Because he wasn't a criminal. Not by law, maybe. But by heart? He'd crossed a line. He picked up his coffee and turned to leave. At the door, he stopped. You really going to go through with this? I already have. The door closed behind him without another word. I stood in the kitchen alone, staring at the spot where he'd stood. And for the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel broken. I felt like I'd just finished something that had taken me a lifetime to start. The Monday after Trevor's visit, I went to the bank. Not the branch downtown with the glass elevators and piped-in jazz. The old one near Maple Avenue, the kind with real people who still remembered your name. Margaret, the teller I've known since her first week on the job 15 years ago, smiled when she saw me. Mrs. Archer, she said, haven't seen you in a while. I need to speak with a manager, I said, about withdrawals and protections. Margaret's smile faded a little. She nodded and stepped away. A few minutes later, I was sitting across from a neatly dressed woman named Eliza. She offered me water. I declined. I'd come with a purpose, and I didn't want to soften it. I want to review every recent transaction, I said, and I want to put safeguards in place. She blinked, but nodded. Of course. Do you suspect fraud? Not fraud, I said. Just betrayal. That seemed to land heavier than I intended, and for a moment, she looked like she didn't know what to say. But she typed my information into the system and pulled up the account. All right, let's take a look. The numbers made my stomach tighten. The life insurance payout had been deposited into the joint account 2 days after Trevor filed the paperwork. From there, it had trickled out in chunks, $2,500 to a home design firm, $1,700 to a premium electronics store, 3 separate payments to a landscaping company. Nothing medical, nothing surgical, nothing for me, and one particularly ugly transaction. $9,000 transferred into Trevor's personal checking account. Can we flag those transfers? I asked. Eliza looked uncomfortable. Legally, he had access at the time. I understand, I said, but I want to make sure he never has that access again. We spent the next hour going through everything. I revoked all secondary user permissions, changed passwords, set up alerts. Eliza walked me through it gently, professionally. But by the end, her tone had shifted. I've seen a lot of things, she said, but not many people take back control like this. I didn't feel proud. Not yet. Just tired. When I got home, there was a package on the porch. I recognized the handwriting on the label before I picked it up. Dana's. Inside was a manila envelope and a note. May. Trevor told me what happened. I don't know what to say. I didn't know the insurance money was for your surgery. He said you were overreacting, but I told him if this was really how things went down, he had no right. I'm sending back the jewelry you gave me last Christmas. I can't wear it now. I'm sorry. No apology. No ownership. Just a polite distancing of herself, like she was stepping off a sinking ship before it pulled her down too. I opened the envelope. Inside were the sapphire earrings George had given me on our 40th anniversary. I'd passed them to Dana with care, thinking they'd stay in the family. I set them on the table and went to make tea. The next day, I got a call from the medical office. The surgery date was still open, but they needed a decision soon. I told them I was working on funding. I didn't lie, just didn't say how alone that working felt. By Thursday, the lawyer had finished preparing the papers. Revocation of power of attorney. Signed, notarized, filed. Petition for financial recovery. Submitted. A hearing date would come next. I didn't know what would happen, but I knew this much. I wasn't going to back down. That night, I found myself pulling out old photo albums. Not the glossy ones for company, but the real ones. The ones with cracked spines and scribbled captions. Trevor with a gap-toothed smile. Trevor in a Halloween costume. Trevor holding his first bicycle with George's hand steadying the seat. There were so many versions of him I used to love. And maybe part of me still did. That was the cruel part. Even betrayal doesn't erase the good. It just buries it under weight you didn't know you could carry. I put the album away and turned off the lamp. Outside, the wind rustled through the maple tree. It was the first cold night of the season, and for the first time in a long time, I let myself feel it. Not just the chill, but the ache of disappointment, full and sharp. I sat in that stillness for a while, and then I whispered into the dark. You picked the wrong woman to underestimate. I didn't expect a response from Trevor. He was never good with consequences. As a boy, if he broke something, he'd blame the dog or say, it was already cracked. As a man, he just got better at making it someone else's fault. But this time, there was no one else. That Friday, the phone rang around noon. I was sorting old linens in the hallway closet when I saw his name on the screen. I let it ring. He called again an hour later, and again after dinner. I didn't answer. By the next morning, I had 3 voicemails. The first was stiff and polite. Hey, Mom, it's Trevor. Look, I think we need to talk. Maybe there was some miscommunication. Give me a call. The second was shorter, sharper. Mom, seriously? Ignoring me isn't going to help anything. I'm trying to fix this. And the third one? Okay, I don't know what kind of story you've told people, but Dana's parents heard about it from someone at church. You're making this ugly for no reason. Just pick up the damn phone. Ugly. As if I hadn't spent the last 20 years cleaning up after his messes. I'd kept every ugly thing quiet. Every bounced check. Every tearful excuse from Dana. Every cold silence at family dinners when they couldn't be bothered to ask how I was doing. He wanted ugly? He hadn't seen anything yet. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in over a decade. I invited someone over. Her name was Ruth Cole, and she lived 2 blocks away. We'd once been close, years ago. Gardening swaps, coffee mornings, choir practice. But life had drifted us apart. Her husband died. I pulled into myself. But she was still there, still kind, still sharp-eyed and steady-handed. When she stepped into my kitchen, she looked around like it hadn't changed a bit. It hasn't, I said. Only thing that's different is the silence. We drank tea. I told her everything, not just the insurance, the years of slow-taking, of being smiled at and drained in the same breath, the birthdays skipped, the help expected, the slow erosion of gratitude. Ruth didn't say much. She just listened. When I was done, she set down her cup and looked me dead in the eye. You're not alone, May. They think we are, but we're not. You'd be surprised how many of us carry stories like this. I blinked. Like this? Exactly like this, she said. Kids who forget we're people, that we earned what we have, that we gave them everything and then some, and they still wanted more. She told me about her own son, how he'd forged her name on a car loan, how she'd paid it off quietly just to avoid shame, how she still smiled when he brought the grandkids over, even though he never once said thank you. Why do we let it happen? I asked her. She shrugged. Because we want to believe they'll wake up someday and remember who we are. We sat in that quiet for a long time. Then Ruth leaned forward. So what are you going to do now? I didn't hesitate. I'm going to finish what I started. The next day, I called my doctor. I asked for a new estimate. I told them I didn't want to wait for legal outcomes. I wanted to know the bare minimum, what it would cost to go forward with the surgery using only my resources. She promised to send me the updated numbers by Monday. Then I called a financial advisor. Not one Trevor knew, not one Dana could charm. Her name was Noreen, and she spoke to me like I was a client, not someone's old mother with just a few assets. I laid everything on the table, the house, the accounts, the pensions, what I'd already lost, what I could still protect. She was impressed by how organized I was. I built a business with George, I said. I may have let my son run through my kindness, but I never let anyone touch the books. By the end of our meeting, we had a plan. Not just to recover what was lost, but to make sure it never happened again. Trusts, controls, beneficiaries reassigned, and a letter, signed and notarized, officially removing Trevor as executor of my estate. I'm leaving it to my granddaughter, I said. She may not be perfect, but she still looks me in the eye when she says my name. I signed the paper slowly, with a steadier hand than I expected. Outside, the wind picked up, a cold front coming through. I went home and turned on the porch light early. I had a feeling someone would come knocking soon, and this time, I'd be ready. Sunday evening arrived with a hush, the kind of quiet that feels thick, like a held breath. The sky outside was soft gray, and the wind had stopped. Even the birds seemed to know something was coming. I was in the kitchen, folding dish towels, when I saw movement through the front window. Trevor's car. I didn't move, just watched. The engine shut off. The door slammed. A few seconds later, he was at the porch, knocking. Not ringing the bell. Knocking. Like this was still his home. Like he didn't want to announce himself too loudly. I waited. A second knock. Firmer. Then his voice. Mom? I opened the door without greeting him. He looked tired. The kind of tired that comes from scrambling to do damage control, not from remorse. His shirt was untucked. There was a stain on one sleeve. I almost didn't recognize him without the polish. I thought we should talk, he said. I already said everything I needed to. Well, I haven't. He walked past me into the house without being invited. Some habits, it seemed, never died. I followed him into the living room. He stood awkwardly in the middle of the rug, like he didn't know where to sit. I talked to Dana, he began. She's upset. The kids are confused. They don't understand why you're being so extreme. Extreme? I mean, he held up a hand, backpedaling. Just that it's a lot. This whole legal thing, the trust, the letters. They didn't understand why I canceled the Christmas trip when I paid for it either, I said flatly. But that didn't stop them from going. He winced. Okay, I get it. You're mad. No, Trevor, I'm not mad. I'm awake. He didn't know what to do with that. His brow furrowed like he didn't recognize the language I was speaking. You could have just talked to me, he said. privately, instead of making it public. You took my life insurance without a word. That was private too, wasn't it? He sighed and sat down heavily on the couch, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. I didn't mean to hurt you, he muttered, but you did. He looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed, though I couldn't tell if it was from stress or sleep loss, or something more inconvenient, like guilt. You've always helped, he said. All my life, and I guess I just assumed you always would. I sat down across from him. That's not help. That's dependency. And you weren't a child anymore. You had your own family. I let you grow, but I never let go. I didn't ask you to. No, I said quietly. You didn't have to. There it was, the center of it. The unspoken contract I'd lived under for decades. He needed, I gave, he asked, I provided, and somewhere along the way, my love became an allowance. My pride became a direct deposit. Trevor leaned back, rubbing his temples. So what now? You return what you can, I said. And the rest gets settled legally. He looked up, panic flickering. You want to take me to court? I want you to understand what it feels like to lose something because someone you trusted didn't think you mattered. His face collapsed for a moment. A flash of real pain, or maybe just the fear of public exposure. I couldn't be sure. I don't have the money anymore, he said. It's gone. I know. So what good will court do? Maybe none, I said. But I'll be heard. We sat in silence. I could feel the weight of his thoughts pressing into the room, the wheels turning, trying to find a way out. There was always a way out for Trevor, charm, excuses, denial, but none of those doors were open anymore. He stood up. I'm sorry, Mom. I know. He walked toward the door but stopped just before it. You're not going to forgive me, are you? Not today. He hesitated. Do you still love me? That one landed hard. He turned to look at me, eyes searching. I never stopped, I said. But I won't love you the way you want anymore. That version of me is gone. He opened the door. Cool air drifted in. He stood there a moment longer. Then he left. And this time, I didn't watch him go. Instead, I went into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and stood by the sink, watching the dusk settle in. It was the first Sunday night in years I didn't dread. And I realized I hadn't lost a son. I'd just stopped pretending I still had the one I remembered. I woke up early the next morning before the sun had fully cleared the trees outside my window. The house was quiet, but not the kind of quiet that comes with waiting. This was a different silence, steady, resolved, like something had settled. I made myself oatmeal the way I always did, just water, a little salt, no sugar. George used to say it tasted like wall paste, but he ate every bite anyway. I smiled at the memory, let it pass through me gently, like a wave that didn't knock me over this time. After breakfast, I sat at the kitchen table with a pen and a legal pad. Not to write another letter, not yet, but to list what was mine. Not just money or property. I meant everything that had stayed, survived, endured. What I had built. I wrote. House, fully paid. Pension garden, perennials still strong. My name, my voice, my strength. That last one I underlined, because I had almost forgotten it was there. At noon, I called June. June wasn't family, she was better. She was someone who'd never once asked me for anything. We used to volunteer together at the senior center before the pandemic shut it down, and after that, we mostly just exchanged Christmas cards. But I remembered her laugh. I remembered that she'd once said, after her own son stopped talking to her, "Well, that just makes more time for me to figure out who I am without him. We met for coffee at the bakery on 3rd Street, the same place Trevor used to take me for Mother's Day when he remembered it, or when Dana reminded him. June was already at the corner table when I arrived, a half-finished scone on her plate and a crossword puzzle halfway solved. "You look taller," she said, grinning. "Something happen?" I sat down, stirred cream into my coffee. Something ended, and something started. She looked at me for a beat, then nodded. "Good." I told her the story, not all at once, but in layers. She didn't gasp or judge, just sipped her coffee and shook her head in that slow way that says, "Me too." By the time we'd finished our second cups, I realized something I hadn't dared believe. I wasn't alone. Later that day, I called Eloise, my granddaughter, not for sympathy, not for comfort, just to hear her voice, the only one in the family that hadn't twisted around me like a vine, tugging always inward. She picked up on the second ring. "Grandma? I was thinking of making roast chicken this weekend," I said. "You free?" A pause, then a smile in her voice. "I can be. Do you want help in the kitchen?" "No," I said, almost laughing. "I want you to sit at the table like a guest. I'll cook. You talk." Deal. We stayed on the phone for another 15 minutes, chatting about her work, her roommate, the city. I didn't bring up her father. She didn't either. It felt better that way. After we hung up, I sat on the porch for a while. The sky was streaked with pink and gold, that lovely stretch of twilight when the day isn't quite over, but the night hasn't begun. And I realized something else. I didn't miss Trevor, not the man he'd become. I missed the boy I used to know, the one who fell asleep in the back seat after long drives, who brought me dandelions and called them flowers, who scraped his knees and cried for me, only me. But that boy was long gone. And the man who took his place? He wasn't mine to carry anymore. I stood up, brushed a leaf from my sweater, and went back inside. That night, I slept without waking once. No dreams. No spinning thoughts. Just rest. And in the morning, I would wake up again to the sound of my own strength. Steady. Undeniable. Still here. I didn't hear from Trevor for 5 days. Not a call. Not a message. Not even one of those empty gestures he used to toss my way when he wanted to pretend nothing had happened. A forwarded meme, a blurry photo of his kids, a one-word text, "Thinking of you." This time, there was nothing, and it was exactly what I needed. On the 6th day, I got a letter, a real one, postmarked 2 towns over. The envelope was thick, expensive, the kind lawyers use when they want to impress or intimidate. My stomach tensed as I opened it, half expecting threats, accusations, or some attempt to guilt me back into submission. But it wasn't from Trevor. It was from Dana. Her handwriting was small and careful, each line perfectly spaced. She always did have a flair for appearances. But the tone? That was new. "May, I don't know what to say, or if you even want to hear from me. I don't expect forgiveness. I'm not even sure I'd ask for it if I did. But I need to tell you this. I didn't know what Trevor was doing with the policy. He told me he was reallocating family resources. That's the phrase he used. I didn't ask questions, and I should have. I see now that I've let a lot slide. Let him make the decisions. Let him speak for both of us. Let him turn your generosity into something transactional. That's on me, not just him. I talked to the kids. I told them the truth, or what I understand of it. I didn't sugarcoat it. I won't anymore. I don't know where this leaves us, but I wanted to say it. Not over text. Not through Trevor. From me. I hope you find what you need, whatever that means for you now. It wasn't exactly an apology. Not really. But it was more than I ever expected. I folded the letter carefully and set it aside. I didn't feel triumphant or vindicated. Just calmer. Like something inside me had been acknowledged, even if too late. That evening, I pulled out a new journal, one Ruth had given me just last week. On the first page, in careful cursive, I wrote, "Things I am reclaiming." Then I made a list. My decisions, my peace, my voice, my future. And under that, in smaller letters, my boundaries. Because that was what all this really came down to, wasn't it? Boundaries. Lines that should have been drawn years ago. The kind you don't always see until someone steps over them. When I was done, I tucked the journal into the drawer beside my bed. Not hidden, just close. The next day, I met with Noreen, my financial advisor. She had the trust documents ready, all revised, all clean. Eloise would inherit the house, the accounts, everything that remained. "She'll have to be responsible with it," I said. "She will," Noreen replied. "She has a good head. And she's the only one who didn't forget who you are." It was the first time in months I signed papers without that hollow, sinking feeling in my chest. No second guessing, no doubt. Just the calm assurance that comes when you finally stop handing your life over to people who treat it like small change. Outside the office, I sat in my car for a while, letting the quiet settle around me. I looked at my hands on the steering wheel, veined, worn, still steady. George used to hold those hands every night. Even when there was nothing to say, even when the days had been long and quiet and gray. He never let go first. I let my fingers relax. There's something powerful about deciding who you are, not based on who needs you, but on who sees you. And for the first time in a long time, I felt fully seen. Not by Trevor, not by Dana, but by myself. And I wasn't going to look away again. The official court summons was delivered on a Wednesday. A plain white envelope, stamped with the seal of the county clerk's office. The kind of thing that used to scare me. The kind of thing I once would have hidden in a drawer for days, pretending it wasn't real until someone else handled it. Not anymore. I opened it at the kitchen table with my morning tea. The date was set. 4 weeks from now. Small claims court. Petition for recovery of improperly withdrawn insurance funds. Filed under May Ellen Archer versus Trevor Scott. Archer. Seeing it in print felt surreal. I thought I might cry, but I didn't. Instead, I folded the letter neatly, placed it in a new folder marked legal, and set it beside my grocery list, right between milk and toothpaste. Because that's what this had become, not a catastrophe, not an explosion, just something to handle, like everything else. Later that morning, I drove to the pharmacy. My knees ached. They always did in the rain. But I didn't let that slow me down. Not anymore. I walked through those aisles like I owned them, like a woman with a name and a spine. While I waited for my prescription, I ran into Sylvia Collins, an old acquaintance from church. She used to sing alto in the choir, sharp and loud. We'd never been close, but she smiled when she saw me. "May, you're out and about." "Sure am," I said, trying to keep it light. "Glad to see you up and moving. I heard about the family situation." So it had spread. I shouldn't have been surprised. Small towns don't run on electricity. They run on whispers. "I suppose everyone's heard by now," I said. Sylvia leaned in, lowering her voice. Some folks are calling it the insurance scandal. Others just say you finally did what we all should have done years ago. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, honey, she said, chuckling. You're not the only mother in this town who got turned into an ATM with a casserole recipe. I laughed, genuinely. For the first time, I felt how many women like me were out there, standing in kitchens, holding on to pride, wearing smiles that hid disappointment. Not bitter, just tired. And maybe, like me, just now waking up. That afternoon, I called Eloise. I have something to tell you, I said. Good news or bad? Just news. I explained the court date, the documents, the trust. Her name now listed officially as the sole heir to my estate. Wait, she said. You did all that? I did. There was a long pause. Then, quietly, Grandma, why me? Because you showed up, I said. Because you listened. Because when I looked at you, I saw a future I wasn't ashamed to invest in. She was quiet again, but I could hear her breathing. Steady. Deep. I won't waste it, she said at last. I know. After we hung up, I sat in the armchair by the window, watching the light shift through the maple tree. The same tree George planted the year Trevor was born. It had outlived him, outgrown its space, cracked the sidewalk in 2 places. Still, I never cut it down. Some things, even cracked, even heavy, are part of you. But now I realized something else. I didn't have to carry the whole tree anymore. I could prune it, shape it, let the sunlight through again. That evening, I made a roast. Not because anyone was coming, just because I wanted to. I set the table for one, lit a candle, and poured myself a glass of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. This felt like one. Halfway through the meal, the phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. Mrs. Archer? The voice asked. Yes? This is Celia Hartman. I'm a reporter with the Wilmot Daily Chronicle. I'm following up on a story about elder financial abuse and... I hung up. I wasn't interested in headlines. Not now. Not yet. This wasn't a story for readers. Not until it was finished. This was still mine. Every word of it, every chapter. And I was going to write it my way. The week after the summons, I received flowers. No card, no return address. Just a modest bouquet, yellow lilies and white daisies, left at my front door sometime in the late morning. I brought them inside, set them on the table, and stared at them like they might offer a confession. But they didn't. I didn't need to guess where they came from. Trevor had always preferred gestures to apologies. It was easier for him, less messy, less exposure. A silent offering with no eye contact required. He'd send flowers, but never stand at the threshold with humility in his face. I didn't call to thank him. Instead, I clipped the stems, changed the water, and placed them in a vase. Not on the kitchen table, but in the guest bathroom. Somewhere they couldn't pretend to mean more than they did. 2 days later, I received a letter from his lawyer. Formal, polished, full of vague concern and veiled caution. They weren't contesting my right to file the claim, but the tone was clear. They hoped I'd reconsider. That maybe we could resolve things privately to avoid further emotional distress. Emotional distress. I laughed out loud when I read it, as if they were trying to shield me from a storm that had already passed, as if they hadn't been the very ones who stood outside while it poured, watching me get soaked. I handed the letter to Margot at our next meeting. Standard, she said. They're trying to feel you out. See if you'll blink. I won't. She looked up at me then, not as a client, but as a woman. You're doing better than most. I'm doing what I should have done 20 years ago. She smiled. Still better late than never. Afterward, I stopped by the courthouse. Not for any legal reason. I just wanted to see the place. The room where I'd soon speak my truth. It wasn't much. Neutral walls, stiff chairs, a dull clock ticking above the judge's bench. But it didn't intimidate me. Not anymore. It looked like a place where small things mattered, where quiet voices got their moment, where someone like me could stand and say, "This happened," and finally be heard. Outside, on the courthouse steps, I saw a woman in a long blue coat. She looked familiar, vaguely. A neighbor? Someone from the community center? She hesitated as I passed her, then approached. "Mrs. Archer?" "Yes." "I'm sorry to bother you. I just wanted to say—" She looked nervous, like she was saying something forbidden. "Thank you." "For what?" "For doing what some of us never could." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. She gave me a quick smile and walked away. It stayed with me the whole ride home. That evening, I made a call I'd been putting off. The doctor's office. They'd sent me an updated estimate for the surgery 2 weeks ago. Lower than before, with some financial aid worked in. It was still high. Still not nothing. But now it was within reach. "I'd like to schedule it," I told the receptionist. "You're ready?" "Yes." I hung up and sat very still. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about Trevor anymore. It was about that quiet question I'd been circling since this all began. Do I still get to live? And the answer finally was yes. Not just survive. Not just endure, but live. On my own terms. In my own house. With my own name written clearly across every document, every check, every small, hard-earned thing I still had. The wind picked up outside, rustling the leaves along the driveway. I wrapped a shawl around my shoulders and stepped out onto the porch. It was cool, but not cold, the kind of evening that smelled like damp earth and the coming shift of seasons. I sat there until the streetlights blinked on. The flowers were still in the bathroom, and for once, I didn't feel like anything in this house, including me, was wilting. He came back the day before my pre-surgery checkup. I was on the porch, deadheading the marigolds along the front walk, when I saw his car ease around the corner like it had something to be sorry for. He parked across the street this time. Didn't pull up into the drive like he used to, like he was still welcome. I didn't stand. Didn't wave. Just snipped another bloom and dropped it into the plastic bucket beside me. He crossed the street slowly, hands in his jacket pockets, eyes low. "Mom." "Trevor?" He stopped a few feet from the porch steps, like there was a line drawn between us and he could feel it, even if he didn't know who put it there. "You look good," he said. "I'm having surgery next week," I replied. Hard to say if good fits. He gave a tight, awkward smile. I heard. I waited. He looked down, then back up. I came to say something, maybe too late, maybe not. I kept my hands busy with the clippers. Let him speak on my time now. "I messed up," he said. "I thought I was doing the right thing. Maybe at first I was. But then I didn't stop myself. I didn't think I had to." "You didn't think you'd be caught," I said, still calm. He flinched, but nodded. "I guess not." I finally set the clippers down, wiped my palms on my apron. "Why now?" I asked. "Why are you really here?" He didn't answer right away. Then, "Because Dana left." I didn't react. I'd wondered. The signs had been there. The absence. the quiet. The flowers, maybe hers, maybe not. She took the kids to her sister's place, he added. Said she needed space. Said I needed a mirror. I waited. I've been sitting in that big house, he said. The one you helped us buy. And I looked around and realized I don't even know how to be in it alone. I don't know how to be anything without someone fixing my mess. Still, I said nothing. I'm sorry, Mom. He looked at me then. Really looked. Not through me. Not past me. Like he saw the years on my face and finally understood what they'd cost. I believe you, I said. About being sorry. He took a step forward. Then maybe we could... But I don't forgive you. Not yet. His face twisted slightly, like he didn't know what to do with that kind of honesty. I don't know if I ever will, I continued. Not because I want to punish you, but because forgiveness isn't something you ask for like a glass of water. You earn it. Over time, if you even can. He looked down at the marigolds. They always come back, he murmured. Yes, I said, but not always in the same shape. He stood there a minute longer. Then he nodded. I won't bother you again. That's not what I said. He looked at me, surprised. You can call, you can write, you can try, but I won't make it easy, and I won't pretend this didn't happen. He swallowed. Okay. I picked up the bucket and started for the porch. As I passed him, I stopped and turned. I'm not the mother you used to have, Trevor. That version of me is gone. If you want to know the one who's left, you'll have to meet her like anyone else. With respect. He nodded once, tightly, then turned and walked back to his car. I didn't watch him drive away. Inside, I set the bucket down, washed my hands, and sat by the window. I didn't cry, didn't feel relieved or angry or hopeful. What I felt was clean, like I'd rinsed something bitter off my skin. And I was ready for whatever came next. The morning of the checkup, I woke before the alarm. Not from nerves, not from pain, just from the strange, quiet hum of anticipation. The kind that comes when your life starts pointing forward again, however slightly. I put on my good cardigan, the one with the deep green buttons that George always said matched my eyes. Drove myself to the clinic. No one waiting beside me. No one holding my hand. And for the first time, that didn't feel like absence. It felt like clarity. The nurse was kind. The doctor was brisk. He reviewed the scans, asked questions, nodded. You're in good shape for this, he said. We'll take good care of you. I nodded too. I'd heard those words before, during George's last surgery. They didn't save him. But I wasn't him. And I wasn't afraid. Afterward, I stopped by the market. Bought plums, eggs, a small loaf of seeded rye, a little something to feel normal. Then I drove home, where the house met me not as a reminder of loneliness, but as a space I'd reclaimed. There was a letter in the mailbox. From Eloise. Not typed. Not emailed. Written. Grandma, I'm proud of you. I know that's not something people say to their elders often, but I'm saying it anyway. You could have let this all slide. You could have said, what's the point? Or, I'm too tired. But you didn't. You stood up. Not just for yourself, but for every woman who gave too much for too long. I don't know what you're feeling right now, but I hope it includes peace. Because you deserve it. I'll be there for the surgery. I already cleared my schedule. Love, E. I read it twice. Then I folded it slowly and placed it in the drawer beside my bed, not out of sight, but close, where it could remind me of who was still with me. That evening, I lit the porch light early, not because I expected anyone, but because I liked the way it softened the shadows. A few hours later, Ruth stopped by with a casserole and a book of crossword puzzles. She didn't stay long, just enough to chat, check on me, give my hand a warm squeeze before heading home with her coat flapping in the breeze. "You're not alone," she said, standing in the doorway. "I know," I replied. After she left, I sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, sipping tea. The night was cool and clear, stars blinking like they still believed in wishes. I thought about Trevor, about the apology, about the limits of what could be repaired. He hadn't called again. I didn't expect him to. But the silence didn't ache like it used to. It just lived, quietly, beside me. Healing, I was learning, wasn't about feeling better. It was about feeling real, about standing in the full weight of everything and saying, "This is mine. I survived it. I'm still here." And I was. I watched the porch light flicker gently against the wind. Next week, I'd go under anesthesia. Trust strangers with my body. Wake up sore and groggy and full of unknowns. But tonight I was whole, and no one had taken that from me. They wheeled me into surgery at 6:45 a.m. The lights overhead were cold and too bright, and the nurse who took my pulse had a voice like crushed velvet. "You'll be asleep before you know it," she said, smiling. I wasn't afraid. Not because I thought nothing could go wrong, but because I'd made the choice. It wasn't something I'd been talked into or cornered into. It was mine. Eloise was in the waiting room. She arrived early, coffee in hand, her hair pulled back like she was going into a meeting. When she leaned down to kiss my forehead, I caught her scent, something soft and steady. I thought, she will remember this when she's older. I hoped she would. I went under without fanfare. No prayers, no trembling, just trust. When I opened my eyes again, the world was slow and floaty. Blurred corners. A nurse adjusting something beside me. Eloise's voice somewhere near my shoulder saying, "She's waking up." I didn't feel pain, not yet. What I felt was stillness. A quietness inside me I hadn't known I was missing. Later, in the recovery room, they brought me ice chips and soft blankets. Eloise sat by the bed reading a book, occasionally glancing up to check on me. She didn't hover. She didn't rush. She just stayed. "You're doing great," she whispered once. And I was. The surgeon came by in the afternoon. "No complications," he said. "Everything went as planned." I nodded. My throat was dry, but I managed, "Thank you." He smiled. "You'll be walking again without pain in a few weeks. Stronger than before." Stronger than before. That evening, after Eloise left to get dinner, the room grew quiet. The hallway sounds became muffled. Machines beeping, nurses moving like shadows past my door. And for the first time in a long, long while, I felt my life stretching forward instead of folding back on itself. Not because I had more years ahead, I might not, but because I had reclaimed the ones I'd been given. I thought about Trevor. I wondered if he knew, if he cared. Then I let the thought drift away, like smoke from a candle blown out gently. He wasn't the story anymore. This was. I spent the night in and out of sleep, the kind that comes in soft, warm waves. No nightmares. No memories clawing at the edge of my mind. Only quiet. Only breath. Only the long, slow turn toward what came next. And I knew, deep in the part of me that had once nearly gone quiet, that I was going to be okay. Maybe not perfect. Maybe not whole the way I used to be, but okay. Still here, still strong. They discharged me on the 4th day. Eloise brought my coat, helped me into it, and held my arm as we walked slowly to the car. The sky was pale and wide, early spring light spreading across the parking lot like a promise. "You look steadier already," she said as she opened the door for me. "I feel it," I said. "In my bones." She smiled, but there was something more in her eyes. A kind of reverence, almost. Not pity, not concern, just quiet recognition, as if she saw all of me, not just the grandmother in the passenger seat. The ride home was silent for a while. We passed the corner where the florist used to be, the bakery George loved, the little church I stopped attending when the hymns started to feel like habit instead of hope. Then Eloise spoke. "Did you know you scared him?" I turned my head slowly. "Trevor?" She nodded. "Dad doesn't say much, but I heard him talking to Uncle Mark. He said you changed, that he didn't recognize you anymore." I let out a breath, half laugh, half ache. "I didn't change. I just stopped pretending." Eloise glanced at me, a flicker of approval in her face. "Good." We reached the house. She parked in front and helped me to the porch. I walked slower than usual, but not fragile. Just careful. When we stepped inside, I expected to feel overwhelmed, afraid of being alone, of recovery without someone here full time. But the moment the door closed behind us, I felt something else entirely. Relief. Home wasn't a reminder anymore. It was a reward. Eloise helped me settle on the couch, brought me a cup of warm broth, and fluffed the pillows behind my back. She even lit the candle on the end table without me asking. Lavender, George's favorite scent. "I'll come by tomorrow," she said. "You call if you need anything." "I will," I promised. She leaned down and kissed my cheek. "I love you." It was the kind of thing she'd said before, but today it landed deeper, like a seed settling into soil that had finally been cleared of weeds. "I love you too, Elle." After she left, I sat in the hush of the house, letting it wrap around me. The walker stood near the doorway, but I didn't reach for it yet. I sat there and watched the light shift across the floorboards, listened to the sounds of birds outside the window. It was the first time in months I wasn't bracing for the next disappointment. That night, I moved slowly, but on my own, brushing my teeth, changing clothes, getting into bed without a second pair of hands. My body ached, yes, but it didn't protest. It obeyed. Before I turned out the light, I pulled open the drawer beside me. Inside, the letter from Eloise, a copy of the court filing, my new will, the journal where I'd written that quiet vow, things I am reclaiming. I added one more, my rest. Then I closed the drawer and turned off the lamp, and for the second time in a week, I slept through the night. 3 weeks passed. The bruises faded. The stitches dissolved. The walker moved from room to room, then stayed in the corner, unused. Each day I grew quieter in my body, not from shrinking, but from steadiness. From knowing I didn't have to rush anymore, that I'd earned the right to move through the world on my terms. The court date came. It was raining that morning. I wore my navy coat and pinned my mother's brooch to the collar. George used to call it my armor. The small things women wear when they have to go face the world and be sharper than the silence. Eloise came with me. She didn't speak much on the drive, but her hand rested gently on mine the entire way. Trevor was already there when we arrived, sitting alone on the far bench in the waiting area, eyes on his shoes. He looked older than I remembered, not aged, just worn in places I hadn't seen before. He didn't look up when I passed. Inside, the courtroom was small. No drama, no gavel banging, just a table, a judge, a few chairs, and the quiet tension of ordinary justice. I told the truth, calmly, clearly, that the money had been taken without consent, that the papers had been signed when I was vulnerable, that the decision had cost me my options, my safety, my trust. Trevor's lawyer said words like intention, family trust, and miscommunication. But the judge, a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and a gaze that didn't flinch, looked directly at me when she spoke. This court recognizes your right to recover what was taken. The evidence is sufficient. The damage is real. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just exhaled. Outside, Trevor followed me to the sidewalk. "Mom," he started. I held up a hand. "I don't want your apology today," I said. "I want your silence. I want you to go live your life with the full knowledge that mine no longer belongs to you." He nodded once. Just once. Then walked away. And this time, I let myself watch him go. It's been 2 months. The check came. I deposited it. Not because I needed it, but because it was mine. I used a portion to fund the local women's legal clinic, the one Lorna Bell volunteers for. The rest? I tucked away. Quiet power, no fanfare. I see Eloise twice a week. We play cards sometimes. She tells me stories from work. I've started teaching her to make the lentil stew George loved. She still adds too much garlic, but I don't correct her. It's hers now. As for Trevor, he writes letters. Short. Careful. I read them when I feel strong. Sometimes I reply. Not often, but sometimes. He's learning that love isn't something he can withdraw like a banknote. That forgiveness is earned in footsteps, not signatures. And me? I wake early, tend to the garden, drink my tea hot, read the paper all the way through, even the boring parts. My steps are slow, but my spine is tall. The house is quiet, but not empty. Because what I reclaimed isn't just a savings account or a title. It's a self. It's a voice. It's the right to be seen and to decide when and by whom. And if you've read this far, maybe it's your turn. Maybe it's time to say no, to pull back what was never given freely, to let the silence end. If this story found something in you, leave a comment. Share it. Remind someone you know it's never too late to be seen.